Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you guys how I converted this tank top onto a dress. First thing you're going to do is grab yourself some paper and lay it down flat. You're going to fold your tank top in half so that the center front is lining up to the edge of the paper. First thing you need to do is trace out your actual pattern first. Once you have it traced all around, you're gonna extend that side seam. I extended my side seam to 25 inches. I am only 5'1", so 25 inches is enough length for me to cover everything that needs to be covered. From there, you can darken up your lines and you're gonna move on to the center back. Before you move on to the center back, always make sure that you add your annotations. This piece here is the center front, so make sure to write that on there. It is going to be cut on fold, and you're only going to cut one because it's going to be cut on fold. Moving on to the center back. You're going to trace it just like we did with the front. Make sure that that center back is aligned with the edge of the paper. It's going to allow it to be perfectly straight. From there, add your markings, add the marking for where your strap is going to meet at the center back. And then from that point, just go ahead and add your side seam. To make sure that your side seam is pivoting out the same distance, you can measure the distance from the center back to where the side seam is for the center front. My extension was 17 inches and I added an additional inch just so that I had a little bit more space, because you have to account for your butt being there. It's not flat like your front, right? So you need a little bit more fabric to go around the curvature of your hind parts. From here, I measured my shoulder strap, which was 12 inches and by 3/4. Go ahead and bring your fabric along with your sewing pattern over to the table and you are gonna cut it. The patterns do not have a grain line, and that is because the center back and the center front will account for your grain. Now, my center back is not on a fold because I did not have enough fabric. So I gave myself an extra 1/2 inch from the salvage edge, and my garment is going to end up having a center back seam because I didn't have enough, and that's okay. Sometimes you have to make mild pivots. Y'all know I love to do batch sewing, so from this point all I did was pin my center back, pin my side seams together, the side seam of the front to the back, and once you have all 3 seams pinned, I brought it over to the sewing machine so that we get started on the sewing. Make sure to have it on a triple stretch stitch. I also kept my seam allowance at 1/2 inch. Once sewn, I brought it over to the serger so that I can clean off the edge. When you are working with stretchy fabric, it's really important that you serge the edges. Now, if you don't have a serger, it's super easy to do a zigzag stitch over the raw edge just to make sure that it doesn't fray. Bring your partial garment back over to the table. Make sure that your markings are in place for your center back placement of the strap, and you're going to measure out your neckline for the front. Once you have it measured, add in an extra 2 inches and you're going to cut a piece of fabric that is that length plus 2 inches, and the width needs to be 2 inches wide. Once you pin it, we are going to sew at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. As you can see on the right screen, there's a little bit that's left over, and that is okay. It will look a little something like this. All you're gonna have to do is fold it over onto itself. You're gonna fold the binding onto itself. But before we do that, there are some clips that we're gonna have to put. Whenever you have a curve, you always have to clip into it. That way the fabric can lay nice and flat. You clip the seam allowance right up to the stitch line without cutting the seam. Do not cut the seam. And when you do that, it just allows a little bit of ease. That way when you roll the binding over, it lays nice and flat. After you do your clips, you are going to trim some of the seam allowance off. Now, I like to trim about 1/4 of an inch off. From here, you're going to fold the binding over the seam allowance. Now, I have a cover stitch machine, therefore I'm just gonna let that other half of it just hang over like so. But if you do not have a cover stitch machine, the best thing for you to do is to fold the raw edge into the binding so that it is hidden. Once you have it in place, go ahead and add some pins to secure it. So from here, I'm gonna bring it over to the cover stitch machine, and I'm just gonna add 2 rows of top stitching. The cover stitch machine also adds the serging in the backside because technically it's supposed to capture the raw edge. But for this instance, what I do is once I sew across that completely, I just grab a pair of scissors and I trim the raw edge. Until my heart gives in, I will do everything I can. Alright y'all, I am almost done. I brought it back over to the table. I'm going to trim off that excess binding, and I'm going to flip that binding to the back and kind of just trim right along that cover stitch serge that the machine did, just to give it a nice clean look. I cut out another piece of binding strip for the neckline, and I started from the center back. The binding is going to be the same as before. It's 2 inches wide. Once you measure out your neckline, that would be the measurement plus 24 inches, since that's the length of the shoulder strap. I pinned it all around the neckline, and I allowed the ends to hang towards the center front, just like it looks here on the left with my little diagram. Definitely, if you have any questions, drop them down below. I'll be more than happy to answer and help. From here, I brought it over to the sewing machine. This section here, sewing this section here was a little tricky, and I had to do some additional trimmings, but basically for the center front, I just had to make sure that my 1/2 inch seam allowance was capturing the very edge of that center front binding, right? It had to go across it evenly, otherwise there would be a small opening and the raw edge would show. So if you have to trim, definitely trim it. Make sure that it's smooth into the underarm as shown in my little diagram here in the upper left. and keeping your seam at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I went ahead and sewed with the triple stretch stitch. Alright, so from here I folded the binding onto itself. If you are following along, make sure that the binding is being folded towards the back side and not towards the front. Use pins, of course, to pin it in place. As always, you're going to follow this all the way towards the other strap and just make sure that it's nice and flat. Since I am using a cover stitch machine, at this point, once the pinning was done and it was secured, I cover stitch from one end to the other. Once you have it all pinned, it should look like this. Alright, it's starting to come together. At this point, it would be a good time for you to decide if you're going to make it a crisscross back or if you're going to have them, I don't know, both on one side or have it like your regular way. One cool trick you can do is add a buttonhole onto the dress or the shoulder strap, and then add a button. That way you simply hook it and you have the versatility to be able to alternate whichever side or whichever way you want to do it. But starting from one of the end of the shoulder straps, I'm just going to cover stitch all the way around. Now that the straps are complete, I went ahead and I grabbed my measuring tape just to make sure that the length was correct. If your length is a little bit longer or if it seems uneven, definitely grab a pen and your measuring tape to measure. So mine was off by a couple of inches, which makes sense because I gave myself a little bit of grace just in case. But I marked it at 12.5 inches. From there, I went ahead and I serged the ends just so that they had a cleaned finish and it wouldn't fray. And then you can make a perimeter stitch where you're going to place it. And that's just like making a square onto the back neckline, so that it stays in place and the top is complete. At this point, all that was needed was to hem, and with the cover stitch, it's super easy to hem any stretchy material. The only tip I would have is to make sure that you trim your seam allowance, otherwise the bulkiness can throw off your stitching. So once I trimmed it, I went ahead and I just folded the hem over and I cover stitched that bad boy and I was done. Here's the final results, final look from the tank top to the dress. If you have not subscribed to the channel, definitely subscribe, like, share, comment down below if you have any questions, and I will see you next time. Happy sewing!